In 1917, the world fell silent. No crickets, no wind, no sound at all, and above a quiet bay an oval light hovered, waiting. Tonight, the signal has returned. Niko Carver arrived in West Egret on an evening that felt ready to break into night. His small rented house sat by the bay, just a narrow bed, a writing desk, and a window looking straight onto the water. People said he was lucky to find it. From his porch, he could see the massive estate of Jaspar Gadsby, the mansion where the lights never went out. That very first night, before Niko had even unpacked, he heard it, a trumpet. Not a full tune, just scattered notes, cut short and drifting into the waves. Sometimes soft as a breath, sometimes sharp enough to rattle his window glass. Curiosity was Niko's only habit. He pulled out his old college toy, a pair of lenses clamped into a brass frame, his homemade binoculars. Through them, he saw the Gadsby estate blazing bright, chandeliers burning, gardens glowing red, people moving as if the party would never end. And yet, at the far edge of all that light, something else caught his eye. Across the bay, on the Beaumont dock, there was a faint green shimmer. A light, a green beacon. Niko held his breath. The light wasn't steady like a lighthouse. It blinked, then paused, then blinked again. No rhythm he recognized. Stranger still, every time the trumpet stumbled through a phrase, the green light seemed to flare back, answering. He adjusted the binoculars. That's when he saw Jaspar Gadsby himself. Not dancing, not holding a glass like the others. He stood by the waterline, arms stretched out as if reaching toward the light. Not the host of a party, but the keeper of a secret signal. The next morning, rumors flew everywhere. Some swore Gadsby had once been a Navy spy. Others claimed his fortune came from smuggling. A few whispered the parties were only a front for something darker. Everyone had a story, half true and half smoke. Yet no one, not one person, spoke about the green beacon across the bay. On the second night, the trumpet returned. This time, Niko didn't just listen. He opened his notebook, writing down each beat. His binoculars swept across the bay. The water looked flat, but the reflections quivered, as though a giant invisible hand was tapping beneath. Then he saw it, faint flashes rising from the deep. Barely a second long, gone before a breath could finish. To anyone else, they'd look like fish scales catching light. But Niko knew they matched the trumpet exactly. His palms sweated against the page. In the broken trumpet notes and heavy salt fog, a dangerous thought came to him. This wasn't just about music or wealth or even forbidden love. This was a signal. Cliffhanger. Niko raised his eyes from his notes. On one side of the bay, the Gadsby mansion glared like fire. On the other, the green beacon blinked like a question. And caught between them, Niko realized he was no longer just a neighbor. He had stepped into the line of transmission between humanity and something else. On his third morning in West Egret, Niko Carver woke to something strange, a cream-colored envelope sitting on his kitchen table. The front door had been locked all night. No stamp, no postmark, no delivery slip. Only a single line of elegant handwriting. Tonight, Gadsby's estate. No signature, no instructions. He thought about ignoring it, but curiosity won. That evening, with fog creeping across the bay, Niko slipped into an old suit and followed the crowd toward Jaspar Gadsby's mansion. Even at the gates, the sound of jazz thundered out, a 12-piece band, brass flashing, the Charleston so wild the wooden floorboards shook. Champagne spilled like rivers. Fringed dresses spun under chandeliers. Guests shouted stories about Gadsby, that he had smuggled gold or stolen back a ship from Cuban pirates or held the map to buried treasure. Everyone swore they knew the truth, yet not one of them claimed to have ever heard Gadsby speak directly. Niko slipped away from the crowd, walking a side hallway. There he found a door left half open. Inside was no ballroom, but a hidden chamber. Coiled copper wire climbed the walls, arc lamps crackled on steel frames, and at the center sat an old analog oscilloscope glowing faintly green. Its line trembled, jagged, pulsing like a heartbeat. He stepped closer. The air smelled sharp, metallic. Like ozone, the bulbs buzzed under a pressure he couldn't see. Just as he reached for his notebook, a voice spoke behind him. "Do you hear the rhythm?" Niko spun around. Jaspar Gadsby stood in the doorway. Impeccable, white suit pressed, thin black tie, silver-gray eyes that never smiled. He didn't look like a party host. He looked like a watchman guarding treasure. "The rhythm?" Niko stammered. Jaspar didn't answer right away. He moved to the machine, brushed its dial with one hand. The line on the screen leapt, dipped, then repeated a strange sequence: 5 beats, 3 rests, 2 strikes. From the distant ballroom came the same pattern, hammered by the snare drum. 532, Jaspar murmured, like reciting a code. "Music is only the mask. The rhythm is the key." Niko's chest started to match it, his own heartbeat drifting off its normal pace. And beyond the bay, Jaspar's eyes lifted toward the window. Niko followed his gaze. The water was black as oil. The ripples were not from wind. They were from something beneath, rising and falling like breath. For the first time, Jaspar's mouth curved, a trace of humanity in his composure. "You have ears to hear," he said softly. "I need someone who can keep rhythm and keep silent." Before Niko could reply, the main ballroom lights flared. The band slid into a new tune, blue-green. The trumpet's voice softened, lingering in empty space. At that same moment, across the bay, the green beacon blinked, not steady, not full. A half-beat, as if someone out there was trying to answer, but couldn't quite catch the rhythm. The party roared on with laughter, glass, and song. Yet in Niko's chest was only silence, the weight of realizing that beneath all this excess, something else was speaking. A dialogue between Gadsby's machines and the light across the water. Cliffhanger. The beacon's broken reply, stopping mid-beat, hinting that something was close, but not ready to arrive. And Niko, just another nameless guest at the party, had become the only witness who understood. The grand spectacle was no celebration at all. It was a transmission. Memory always comes like smoke, hard to grasp, quick to fade, yet carrying its own scent. For Jaspar Gadsby, the sharpest memory of all was the summer of 1917, when the West Egret shoreline was still wild, no mansions, no parties, no crowds. That night, Jaspar was just a young officer on leave. Dahlia Beaumont, barely 19, wore a plain white dress that fluttered in the marsh breeze. Together they climbed the levee, shoes caked in mud, hearts pounding like a half-finished song. Above them, the sky stretched like a drum. Then silence. The crickets stopped. The wind died. Even the waves froze mid-breath. Their own lungs sounded too loud, stripped bare. The horizon split with a line of light, not lightning, not a flare. A silent, perfect arc like a door cracked open. A green halo spread across the bay, glowing and unreal. Dahlia clutched Jaspar's hand. "Do you hear that?" She whispered, but the question itself became strange because there was nothing left to hear. Even her voice seemed trapped inside her chest. Out in the middle of the bay, something oval surfaced. It didn't fall, didn't fly. It simply hung above the water, pressing the surface down like a heavy hand. Its skin was seamless, smooth as poured steel, moonlight bending off it. No wings, no engine, just a weight, a silent presence that bent the world around it. And then, from the Beaumont shoreline, a tiny green light blinked alive. No one had touched a switch. No wires, no hand. Yet it pulsed slow, steady, like a signal already set. Here, at this hour, there will be a return. Jaspar and Dahlia locked eyes. In that moment, their faces reflected the glow as if they themselves were lanterns. Jaspar felt something coil around his soul, an invisible tether, pulling him farther than stars. But they weren't the only witnesses. Tom Buckley, the wealthy young man already chasing Dahlia, had wandered the road behind them. He caught only fragments, a streak in the sky, Dahlia trembling in Jaspar's arms. To him, that was enough. Enough to seed jealousy, enough to twist into a weapon later. She's the kind of girl who falls for tricks and shadows. The night collapsed as suddenly as it began. The halo shrank. The oval craft dissolved into a smear of cold air. Then the sound rushed back, insects, waves, frogs, as though the world itself was desperate to cover up the gap that had just opened. Dahlia burst into tears. Jaspar didn't soothe her. He only gripped her hand harder, palms slick with sweat, but eyes burning with a blind certainty. They had been chosen. The beacon was a promise, a rendezvous for another night. Back in the present, Dahlia sat in her family's parlor, gazing out at the bay. The green beacon still pulsed, 532, its light reflected in her eyes. People often said she had a dreamy gaze, but what they never saw was the emptiness inside it. When asked, "Do you remember when the beacon first blinked?" she only smiled faintly and shook her head. She remembered no summer of 1917, no oval craft hovering over the water, no trembling hand clasped in Jaspar's, as if some invisible hand had erased it all, leaving her only with a vague unease and a light that now seemed like nothing more than decoration. Cliffhanger. Across the bay, Jaspar whispered into the night, eyes fixed on the beacon. And Dahlia, staring at the same glow, had no idea it was once her own hand that brought it to life. Late at night, when the party guests were drunk enough to believe they had danced with angels, Jaspar signaled for Niko Carver to follow. They slipped across wet grass, down to a hidden dock beneath the willow trees. The lake lay dark and flat like an upside-down mirror. "You still hear the rhythm, don't you?" Jaspar asked. His voice was low but sharp enough to echo against the planks. Niko nodded. The pattern from the party, 532, still rang in his bones, like a nail driven deep. Jaspar reached under the boards and threw a hidden switch. The whole surface of the lake shivered. In the middle of the artificial lotus beds, the metal petals unfolded, revealing what had been hidden: a submerged rotor, Tesla coils as wide as barrels, and a spiral antenna disguised as steel lotus leaves. In daylight, it looked like landscaping. At night, it was something else entirely. "This is my machine," Jaspar said, eyes fixed on the glowing arcs of magnetic fields. "It doesn't open with codes or keys of steel. It only opens when the rhythm matches." From his pocket, he drew a yellowed sheet of music, scribbled with uneven notes, the jazz pattern from 1917. Niko recognized it instantly. That was the night the beacon had blinked in sync. Jaspar had built everything around it. "So, the parties," Niko whispered. Jaspar's mouth curved, the light slicing across his cheek like a blade. "They're test runs. The band thinks they're just playing the Charleston, but the rhythm they pound out, it feeds into the water. Standing waves form, the arc lamps modulate, and the whole bay becomes a giant subwoofer, sending a signal. People get drunk on champagne. I get drunk on rhythm." Niko looked down. It was true, the water vibrated in perfect symmetry, patterns rippling like marble veining. The carbon lamps on shore flickered in time, pulsing like a heartbeat. The entire bay was a transmitter, and every dancing guest was just cover for something far larger. Then Jaspar twisted the dial higher. The machine roared. The salty air pressed down, Niko's hair lifted with static. And above them, meteors ripped across the eastern sky, veering off their usual paths. Guests on the balconies cheered, thinking it fireworks. Only Niko knew better. The signal had tugged at a wire in the heavens, and the sky had trembled in reply. "Almost locked," Jaspar whispered. "Just a little more, and they will answer." Niko stared at him, caught between awe and dread. This was too big, too dangerous to be held in the hands of one man in a white suit. Applause thundered from the mansion above, like an ovation. But in the shadows along the bank came another sound, a dry, mechanical click. Niko whipped around. In the brush nearby, a figure in a brown hat was snapping photos, one after another. Each time the small flash went off, his face vanished again into darkness, as if even he didn't want to remember who he was. Cliffhanger, Niko gripped the rail, heart beating with the rhythm of the lake. The game was no longer a secret between him and Jaspar. Someone else was recording evidence now, and they weren't here for the Charleston. The Beaumont house was always full of soft light, yet inside it lived a kind of darkness no lamp could chase away. Every time Dahlia Beaumont drew close to remembering the summer of 1917, the silent halo, her hand shaking in Jaspar's, the memory slammed shut, like an invisible hand had pushed the door closed. Tom Buckley, now her husband, knew exactly how to keep that door shut. Each week he brought in a private doctor. Dahlia would lie on a couch, golden light pressing on her eyelids, a little hypnosis. A mild sedative stirred into warm milk. Whenever she whispered about the green light, Tom cut her off at once. "You're tired. Think about the Riviera instead." And if she muttered emptiness, silence, a figure would appear by chance in the hallway, the man in the brown hat. He would smirk, stepping in like a shadow that could talk. "It's only imagination, Mrs. Beaumont. People dream strange things in hot weather." His voice was flat, mechanical, like an old tape spliced with static. Soon Dahlia began doubting herself. Nights staring at the beacon through her window, she no longer trusted what was memory and what had been planted. Even the wall clock betrayed her, its minute hand lagging a beat behind the second, time itself falling out of sync. Meanwhile, Jaspar Gadsby was out of patience. He cornered Niko Carver, pleading, "I need to see her, just once. Even for a minute, you're the only bridge I have." Niko hesitated, but the beacon had become more than a light, it was a summons. That night, across the bay, Dahlia stood on her balcony. The green glow washed across her face. For a heartbeat, she saw it all again. The bay stretched silent, the oval craft suspended, the absolute void where even breathing was too loud. Tears rolled down before she knew why. For one instant, she whispered Jaspar's name like an echo from another life. Then Tom stepped out, hand heavy on her shoulder. "The beacon again? It's just a lighthouse, Dahlia. You imagine too much." Behind him, the brown hat's reflection darkened the glass. He scribbled something into his small notebook. Days later, in a smoky bar by the train yard, Tom sat across from the brown hat. A red folder slid across the table. On the cover, illegal device confiscation. Inside were photographs. The Tesla coils, the magnetic rotors, the lotus leaf antennas, each diagram labeled in cold black ink. "This is enough to seize it," the brown hat said. His voice ticked like a clock hand against steel. "Gadsby thinks he can dance the world with jazz, but every song runs out, will shut him down." Tom raised his glass, lips curling into a grin. "Do it quickly. The sooner Dahlia forgets." Cliffhanger, the folder closed with a thud, the federal seal stamped in red pointed straight at Jaspar's heart, the machine beneath the lake. On a weekend night, Jaspar Gadsby's mansion blazed brighter than any castle on the bay. Hundreds of Packards and Duesenbergs rolled in, tires crunching on gravel, leaving silver dust hanging in the salty air. Guests whispered, "Tonight's the biggest party yet, maybe the last." No one knew why, but rumors always ran faster than truth. From the balcony upstairs, Niko Carver noticed something off. The band had been given special sheets, a brand new arrangement no one had ever heard. The music had built-in gaps, sudden drops of silence, just like the night of 1917. Pauses sharp as doors opening and slamming shut. At 11 sharp, the music detonated, trumpet blazing, snare cracking, piano hammering like fire. Then, a long, unnatural silence swallowed everything. The crowd gasped, confused, thinking it a mistake. But at that instant, the lake began to glow. A pale green shimmer spread from the center, thin as mist yet bright enough to mirror every wave. Street lamps along the bay sputtered. Some blew out completely, strobing like a seizure. Overhead, constellations shifted ever so slightly, not drunken eyes, but the sky itself twisting, as if someone had turned the heavens by hand. From the stage, the trumpet screamed a final note, so low it rattled every window pane. Wine glasses shattered in guests' hands, the sound waves slamming like a storm without wind. Niko looked down. Jaspar stood alone at the water's edge, one hand on the master switch, eyes shut tight. He was locking the rhythm, forcing the drop of 1917 to sync with the beacon's reply. The machine was caught in half-lock, gears grinding, almost meshing but not quite. Then came the wail of sirens. Along the shoreline, black trucks opened, spilling federal agents into the fog. At their head strode the man in the brown hat, calm as if he owned the mansion himself. Floodlights snapped on, cables unrolled, the bay was under siege. Tom Buckley seized his chance. He led hidden reporters onto the terrace, pointing toward the glowing water. Look at it, a dangerous experiment right here in public. He gambles with our lives for an obsession. Red ink bled across notebooks like fresh wounds. The scene split in two. Inside, guests kept dancing, still believing it was all part of the show. Outside, guns and floodlights closed a steel ring around the bay. At the exact moment the trumpet dropped its final note, the lake erupted in green fire. Niko's whole body tingled as if someone had pressed a live wire into his spine. Jaspar's eyes snapped open. He stared straight out to sea, and then the reply came. On the horizon, a sharp green spark flared. Not a meteor, not fireworks. It pulsed in rhythm with the transmitter beneath the lake, 5-3-2, like a nod from the dark. Cliffhanger. Niko gripped the balcony rail, trembling. Something out there had answered. No longer an experiment, no longer a hallucination. This was a conversation. And every eye, the reporters, the agents, Tom, even Dahlia trembling at her window, had seen it. The night air was heavy with salt. Wind swept across the bay, leaving a thin film of mist on the weathered railings of the wooden bridge. With the tide drawn low, the bridge stretched like a hallway into emptiness, every creak of its boards ticking like a countdown clock. Jaspar Gadsby waited there, his white coat fluttering, eyes fixed on the beacon across the water, as if it were not just a light, but the soul's own signal. Dahlia appeared, her long dress rustling, her hand trembling, whether from the wind or something deeper. Niko Carver stood back, hidden by a timber post. He didn't want to intrude, but he couldn't look away. Tonight, truth would rise like the moon dragging the tide with it. Dahlia, Jaspar's voice carried no elegance now, only the exhaustion of a man who had hidden too much. Every party, every song, every glass of wine, every firework, it was all for one thing. She lifted her eyes, the beacon's green shimmer reflected in them. For what, Jaspar? He drew in a long breath as though inhaling the sea itself, then let loose the confession that had burned him for years. To call you back to where we heard it that night. 1917, the silent halo, the hollow air, the green light, I never stopped hearing it. The air froze, even the lazy slap of waves against the pilings fell away. All that remained was the pounding of hearts. Dahlia touched the rail, closed her eyes, and memory crashed over her sharp, unstoppable, like film reels long buried suddenly spliced together. She and Jaspar, young, standing on the levee, the sky ripped by a blade of light, sound erased, the oval craft suspended over the water. The first pulse of green, not romance, but a countdown, a rendezvous. She gasped, eyes flying open. I remember all of it. The green light isn't just you, Jaspar, it's a call, a meeting point beyond this world. Her voice shook, but it was steady with truth. Tears ran, not from fear but from the mix of horror and relief. The hypnosis of Tom, the lies of the brown hat, shattered. From the shadows, Niko's chest tightened. Part of him ached at the beauty of them reclaiming a shared memory. Another part feared the cost. Love tangled with signals from the void was never just personal. Jaspar stepped forward, his hand trembling but firm as he placed it over hers. I built the machine to repeat that rhythm. Every party, every tune, each one a knock on the door. Not just for me, but to prove you could still hear it. Do you hear it? Dahlia nodded through tears. I hear it, and I'm afraid. But I also know this, if I stop listening, I'll live forever in Tom's lies, in sedatives and broken clocks. I won't live like that. The two stood face to face, the distant beacon glowing in their eyes, merging them into one reflection. From where Niko watched, the moment was almost too beautiful to bear. Not just love confessed, but responsibility shared, a bridge between humanity and something else. But the fragile stillness shattered. From the far shore came the roar of engines, the clang of steel, the crackle of electricity. Niko turned, black trucks lined the bay, crews raising metal towers topped with spinning antennas. The brown hat commanded, voice flat as a funeral bell. Jamming devices ready. Begin 10-minute countdown. Then we seize it all. Electric hums rolled across the water, waves trembling under invisible force. The bridge shook beneath their feet. Jaspar gripped Dahlia's hand harder, fury and despair flashing in his eyes. Niko swallowed hard, knowing time was running out. Cliffhanger. On the brown hat's wrist, a watch blinked red, numbers ticking backward toward 0. Not just confiscation, but the end of everything. The wooden bridge trembled with every wave. Along the shore, the brown hat's jamming towers poured out a low metallic hum, like steel being bent in half. Jaspar pulled Dahlia and Niko away, leading them down a hidden path to the chamber beneath the lake, where his machine still breathed. Inside, the air reeked of ozone. Arc lamps hissed, flashing green across the massive Tesla coil crouched under the wooden floor. Copper wound tight, shrieking as current surged past safe limits. Jaspar set his hand on the main lever, his face stern, yet freed, as though he had carried this secret too long. The window will open only when the beacon peaks, he explained, his voice echoing off the stone. Then we'll have minutes, only minutes. Dahlia stood frozen, heart pounding, her lost summer of 1917 crashing back, the green halo, the oval craft, the silence that swallowed the world. Her voice shook. The window, what for? Jaspar lifted his gaze. His eyes burned with the reflection of the stars themselves. There are two choices. First, we send you through. The beacon has marked a safe coordinate, a crossing. It will be like walking across a bridge made of mist. You'll vanish from this world, but live in another where the call is not denied. He tightened his grip on the hot copper rail. Second, we don't send your body. We send your memory of 1917. A key, proof someone witnessed. Then the door will close forever. You stay, but the chance is gone. Niko felt his stomach twist. He understood. If Dahlia crossed, Jaspar would burn everything, even his own life, to keep the bridge open. If she stayed, Jaspar would still destroy the machine to preserve her memory, leaving humanity in ignorance. The chamber throbbed with sound. The electric hum grew thick, walls pulsing like they held a second heartbeat. Above, the lake swelled and sank like the breath of some giant invisible being. Dahlia clutched her head, eyes shut tight. Past and present collided, storming through her skull. Jaspar, if I go, I leave everything. But if I stay, I'll be gaslit again, hypnotized, erased. My memory will be stolen all over. He stepped close, arms locking her against his chest. Whatever choice, it must be yours, not Tom's, not the brown hat's, not any report. You. Niko turned his head, unable to watch the raw weight of it. Outside, sirens screamed sharper, closer. From the corner of the chamber, a stray radio caught the interference. Tom Buckley's voice cut through, cold as steel. "He's under the lake, right where I said. The coils, the rotors, everything. Seize it now." The brown hat's reply was flat mechanical. "Confirmed, break the circle." Jaspar shut his eyes and threw the lever. Sparks exploded. The Tesla coil screamed. From across the bay, the beacon flared with blinding force, blasting a single green shaft straight into the opening of the narrow window. Cliffhanger, the interstellar door began to open just as the Federal agents closed in. And Tom had been the one to betray them all. The bay blazed like a stage for death. Searchlights swept the water, tearing the salty fog apart. On shore, Federal agents fanned out like hunting dogs, their arms braced around heavy jamming rigs. The sound was brutal, the beacon's rhythm shredded, its signal chopped to pieces, like a jazz solo butchered by a dull knife. Beneath the lake, Jaspar Gadsby sat before the Tesla coil, which screamed like a chained animal. Sweat poured down his face, lit ghost green by the arcs. Dahlia stood close, hands trembling, eyes locked on the lake's surface above, now swelling like a sheet of liquid glass. "We don't have long," Jaspar panted. "The window is open, but the jamming's cutting the rhythm apart." Niko Carver stumbled in, grease-black hands on the console. On the scope, he saw the beacon's wave stuttering, jagged teeth broken by interference. Jaspar sagged forward, drained. For a moment, Niko remembered what he'd written in his notebook. The parties weren't for spectacle. They were for rhythm, always the rhythm. Without thinking, he grabbed a steel rod, jammed it upright beside the coil, and started hammering it with his hand. 5-3-2, 5-3-2. The raw clang filled the chamber, merging with the electrical roar. Human hands keeping cosmic time, patching the gaps the jammers had torn. Jaspar lifted his head, eyes blazing for one last instant. "You keep the beat, and I'll open the door." He shoved the lever forward. The copper glowed red-hot, coils thrashing. Paint smoked, insulation burned. The machine was consuming itself. On the lake, the green light flared white-hot. From the beacon offshore, a shaft of emerald fire answered, spearing a column between the two shores. The water boiled, then cracked into a mirror, flipping sky into sea, sound into silence, people into shadows. Across that mirrored surface, a bridge of mist appeared, trembling as though woven from breath. Jaspar turned to Dahlia. "Go, this is the only way. I've held it for you since 1917. Her eyes cleared. She wept, but not with doubt. She stepped onto the bridge, each pace drifting her further from this world. The light swallowed her form until she dissolved. Or in another version. Jaspar twisted the current, compressing Dahlia's memory of 1917 into a packet of light, hurling it into the beacon. It flew like a green kite into the void, leaving her standing, but her eyes at peace. The moment she crossed, or her memory left, the world froze. 1 second of absolute silence. No wind, no sirens, no waves, no beat of hands, only the hollow quiet of 1917, the silence of the universe waiting. Then boom, not an explosion, a release of breath. The lake shattered into silver waves flooding the banks. Niko was thrown back, ears ringing, but his heart knew the window had closed. The choice was made. The light faded. In the chamber, the Tesla coil collapsed into black ash. Jaspar still stood by the switch, hand on the lever, but his body had slumped like a musician who had just finished the final note. On shore, the brown hat and his agents stormed the dock, guns and lights drawn. They smashed the hatch, but found only Niko coughing in smoke. Jaspar was gone. The lake was quiet now, yet across the bay the beacon still blinked, steady as a heartbeat. Cliffhanger. The brown hat raised the confiscation file, voice sharp as a blade. "The device is destroyed, but where is he? Where?" Niko looked back to the water. The beacon flashed 5-3-2. The answer was no longer of this earth. 3 days after the blast, West Egg Bay was sealed off. Barbed wire stretched like stitches along the shore. Black trucks stood guard, stakes hammered deep with signs that read, "Federal property, no entry." The press was allowed in only after bargaining with the brown hat. The papers wrote, "An electrical accident, a private transmitter gone too far." Their front pages showed nothing but smoke and murky water. Not one line mentioned the beacon or the green light. In the federal warehouse, the remains of the machine lay scattered. The frame dismantled, the Tesla coil blackened inside a wooden crate. But when the brown hat ordered the core opened, it was hollow. Empty. The technician stammered. He only nodded, eyes hidden beneath the brim. He carried the heart away or sent it. Either way, it isn't over. That first night, after the bay was cleared, Niko Carver slipped back to his small house by the water. No one stopped him. To them, he was just a bystander, a reporter with nothing but smudged notes. But he knew the truth. It was his hand that kept the beacon alive, his rhythm that held the signal. At his desk, ink bleeding from the salt air, he wrote, "They'll remember Jaspar Gadsby for his parties, but I know they were never parties. They were signals. His love, his obsession, and that sky where the green light beats like the secret heart of the universe. No one can bury it." His pen shook as he added, "Dahlia, she crossed through the door, or maybe only her memory flew beyond. But this I believe, between love and obsession, between man and the cosmos, there is one meeting point, the green light." Outside the window, the lake lay still as polished glass. No moon reflected. Only a blinking dot across the water, the beacon, steady, pulsing 5-3-2. Not faster, not slower. A question without answer. A promise without end. Dahlia had crossed to the other shore, walking the bridge of mist. Gadsby had vanished with his burning machine, leaving the lake as his grave. Niko closed the notebook and whispered, "We have no more Gadsby, but we still have the light." That night, a trumpet moaned from the distant city. It was not jazz anymore, not celebration. It was broken phrases, fragments of reply, as though the horn itself had learned to become a signal. Jazz was no longer a party. It was the final language between man and the universe. A week later, Niko repaired his old binoculars. Sitting by the window, he turned them on the bay. Across the still water, the beacon blinked, brighter for a beat, then gone. In that flicker, on the blurred glass of the lens, a face appeared, Dahlia, just a single frame flickering like a damaged reel of film. Her lips moved, no sound, but he read the words. "We heard you." Niko dropped the binoculars, heart hammering. Far off, a second light flickered beside the beacon. Not static, not error, a new signal. It pulsed a new rhythm, 2-2-5, not part of the original code. It meant only one thing: Jaspar still lived over there. The brown hat read the report in silence, lips pressed tight. "If he's alive," he muttered, "then the game isn't over." Night bled across the water's edge, black paint dripping over canvas. But the trumpet far away changed into pure code, each note stretched long, as if the universe itself was replaying Gadsby's song, written in electricity and love. Niko closed his eyes, letting the horn fuse with his heartbeat, and wrote the final line in his journal. "The green light will not die. It blinks for those who dare to love, dare to believe, and dare to tap their rhythm against the steel frame in answer to the sky."